Welcome back. We're going to talk about 2.5 natural disruptions to ecosystems. By the end of this lesson, you should be able to explain how natural disruptions, both short and long-term, impact an ecosystem. So we're going to do this by describing what short and long-term natural disruptions are. We're going to identify them as periodic, episodic, and random, and describe how disruptions can impact an ecosystem. We've been alluding to this in some of the past lessons. So, what are natural disruptions? We talked about short-term and long-term. So we've got short-term things that could be hurricanes, or winter storms, or floods, or droughts, which could be short-term or long-term. We have geologic disruptions, volcanoes and earthquakes, both of which can have short-term and long-term consequences. Biologic disruptions, such as insects and diseases. We've got a swarm of locusts over here, which sounds horrifying to me. And fires, which could again be short-term or long-term disruptions, depending on how widespread and how big they were. So what's crazy about natural disruptions is they can be as great or greater than many human-made disruptions. And I know we spent a lot of time talking about all the terrible things that people do to our ecosystem, but it's important to remember that nature can be just as disruptive. So the frequency, aside from being short-term or long-term, of these disruptions can be variable. They could be what we call periodic. They may happen at repeated intervals. This could be something that's seasonal, like wet and dry seasons, like monsoon season, happens at repeated intervals. They could be episodic. They occasionally occur or at irregular intervals, and this could be something like a hurricane. Maybe you don't have a hurricane every year, it could be every other year. We have El Niños and La Niñas, which are on a 2 to 7 year cycle, so it feels regular, but in reality it's pretty irregular intervals. Or it could be something completely random, like an asteroid. Those don't happen very often, thankfully, and there's no real pattern to them. But some things do happen, and Earth's climate is always changing. So it's important to know that global temperatures have changed due to many factors. This could be due to glaciers, even volcanic eruptions can have big changes on Earth's climate, making it much hotter. Our CO2 levels in the atmosphere have been changing even long before people were here. There's been changes in our ocean and atmospheric circulation, which has changes on our climate. It could have to do with how close or how far away the Earth is to the sun in our Milankovitch cycles, many different factors. Even asteroid impacts can affect our climate, and this is the KT boundary between the dinosaurs and the extinction of the dinosaurs. In between that, they found a layer of clay which had a lot of iridium in it, which is very rare on Earth, but very common in asteroids, and this completely changed the climate going after the dinosaurs, which may have led to a lot of extinctions. In addition to climate change, sea levels have changed due to many different factors. And you can see that the sea level through time, there's been times where our sea levels have been very high, our sea levels have been very low, and this is often related to changes in the amount of glacial ice. So again, glacial ice can be changed by many of those climate factors we talked about, may in turn affect our sea level. So these environmental changes, these natural disruptions, have big impacts on our wildlife. In particular, habitat change. So the fires in Australia completely decimated some habitats, which leaves animals homeless and causes them to adapt or to migrate in some species. So animals may have short-term migrations or long-term migrations depending on the type of natural disruption. If it's an annual disruption, such as dry seasons, wildebeests and zebras and gazelles may travel to follow to greener pastures, whereas a short-term migration could be an animal vacating an area because of a fire, which they may return to when the ecosystem recovers. So to summarize, our goal is to explain how natural disruptions, both short and long-term, can impact an ecosystem. So we discussed that these disruptions can be periodic, episodic, or completely random. There's been several things that affect our climate and our sea levels, and it impacts our ecosystems by changing the types of habitats available and also impacting migrations. Maybe animals that don't migrate are now migrating because of these disruptions.